Hi everyone, good morning, welcome, good evening, where depending where you're calling from. Welcome to the Platform Fundamentals Academy. We are so thrilled to kick off this session right now at the top of the hour. I'm Patty Montesinos. I'm your platform outbound product manager and today's host. We have an incredible session lined up today, and I can't wait to dive in. But before we get started, let me share a few quick logistics. These presentations are definitely crafted for you in mind. Our goal is really to inspire you with fresh ideas and practical use cases that will help elevate your understanding of our platform and its applications. Please don't worry if you miss something. The session is being recorded and will be available in our community on the Platform Fundamentals Academy forum. Feel free to fire away with your questions during the presentation. Just a quick reminder, make sure to post those questions in our Q&A section so our amazing panelists can address them. And if we run out of time, don't worry, we'll do our best to follow up and answer those questions. We want to make sure that your voices are being heard, so we'll either post them through our community site. Of course, please make sure to practice Safe Harbor. Sometimes we do mention new features that are coming out, and so we want to make sure that we're compliant with those best practices. 1 second. Okay, so now let's get to the good stuff. I'm thrilled to introduce our fantastic speaker today, Adrian Bissdorf, who will take us on a journey through Clone Admin Console and share some clone best practices. So go ahead, Adrian, feel free to take it away and either share your screen or I can keep going for you.
Thank you, Patty. Thanks for having me and thanks for the introduction. I'm not yet able to share my video. I think that one is, it requires some additional permission, but let me know if, okay, maybe now it works. Good
Oh,
morning,
there, we
everyone.
can see
Thanks
you.
for joining us and thanks for having me. Um, yeah, so my name is Adrian Bissdorf. I'm part of the cloud automation team at ServiceNow. I work with the clone team, and we're excited to share some tips and tricks as well as our clone admin console today. I'll share my screen here. And so thanks, Adam and Patty, for having me. Before we dive in, we have a little poll for everyone on the call just to gauge your level of expertise with Clone. Are you a beginner with Clone? Are you an expert or somewhere in the middle? And Patty, I think you have control over the polls, right?
Yes, I just launched it.
Oh, perfect. All right. So we're excited to see. And while folks are answering that, we have a variety of topics today, so hopefully something for every skill level that we will encounter today. We'll let those responses trickle in. Do we have any responses thus far?
Yeah, it looks like 58% are beginners, 36% intermediate, and 6% experts.
Okay, perfect. So I'm definitely covering a lot of basics today as well. And then for the 6%, we also have some advanced tips and tricks. However, once we go into those tips and tricks, we break them down into great detail. So hopefully it'll be something for everybody there. As I mentioned, we'll dive over into some, oh, there we go, the results. We'll go through some basics. I'm also going to share the Clone Admin Console, our new clone user interface, and which comes pre-installed on all your instances, and then some clone best practices and some more advanced tips as well. We'll have some Q&A at the end. Feel free to type in questions in the chat and we can get to them as we go. So Before we dive in, I'd love to understand also another piece of information from folks joining the call. We know there are different use cases for clone. What do you personally, in your job, use clone most frequently for? And I think this is also a multi-select. So if you have multiple that apply, they can be selected to get a sense of what you use clone for. And then we'll dive into the clone basics. Right, we'll let those responses trickle in as well. Give it a couple more seconds. Any results thus far, Patty?
Yes, we have some results so far. I can share
Perfect.
it. One sec.
New features and upgrades. I see that is almost 82%. So almost everybody is cloning as part of their upgrades and testing, troubleshooting, debugging, developing, customizing applications, nearly half. Training and onboarding, 17%. Backups, 24%. Performance and load testing, 30%. All right. Those are some great use cases there, and it gives us a sense of all the different things clone is used for. So cloning is part of ServiceNow development, and in fact, we do call it a best practice, as these results suggest. It provides you a representative environment on your non-production instance where you can test your changes, any new apps you're deploying, your upgrades. So the main two drivers are testing and upgrades. However, as we see, there are lots of other reasons why you might want to clone. On the right of this slide, I have a little diagram which illustrates cloning at its very basic core. And one important detail is that the data for clone, obviously, we're moving data and metadata from source to target, but it's not a direct copy. The data comes from the last daily backup. And that's a key detail which is important as we walk through today's session. So keep that in mind. Um, and we'll go through some terminology as well. So there's lots of different components of clone. We have a source instance where your data is coming from, a target instance. We have data preservers. That's the data that you want to retain on your target instance. We have exclusions, the data you don't want to copy over. Then we have cleanup scripts, which are automated steps you're taking or the system is taking after the clone completes. You can uh, automate certain post-clone activities, such as regranting roles and permissions, or you can modify data. Then we have clone profiles. These are templates for clone, which you can pre-populate with preservers and exclusions, as well as settings, so that you can have kind of repeatable clone templates. And the clone admin console, which is our clone user interface. Here I'm sharing a screenshot from the clone admin console on our clone status page. One of the things about our new UI is that we provide great visibility and transparency into what what the stages are the clone is undergoing. And so here you can see the main the main parts of a clone are the preparation, then an optional on-demand backup if it is needed. Then we perform the clone, which is essentially a restore from the backup. We apply the exclusions and the preservers. And at the end, we have the scripts. This is just to give a broad overview of kind of the sequence of steps within the clone. And then we'll share just a couple tidbits about our clone app. Before we do so, did anyone on the call thus far? I think we have a poll on this as well. Anyone who used or tried the clone admin console yet on this call? And of course, if you also have any questions about this console, we can feel free to type those in the chat as well as we go through it, and we can address them as part of our Q&A. All right, wait just a moment for the poll. So we did bring this one out in Washington. If you have an instance on Washington or later, which I think pretty much everyone would be at this point, it'll be in the left nav. If you type in clone, you'll find the clone admin console right there. So no manual steps are needed to access it. Do we have any responses yet on clone app usage? All right. So some regular users, some haven't used it but aware of it. So we hope to share some features and functions today. All right. Perfect. All right. Thank you, Patty. Wonderful. So I mentioned this comes pre-installed. The great thing here is that we also have quarterly updates, so you don't have to wait for the family release to get any new features and improvements here. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we released our February release, and I'll share just a few highlights for that release. And I'm also going to share the chat. Let's see if I can do this here. I'll share with you all a link where you can get the latest update in your instance today. So in the Feb release here, we have theme support for Polaris for next experience themes. So as you know, as part of Clone, you can preserve the theme on the target instance. So that one is resolved. Um, and then we also have some greater visibility into your clone progress. If you have clones that run a little bit longer, now you have more granularity into that progress as well. The default clone profile comes pre-populated. We also have some other UI, UX improvements throughout the app. So go check it out. It's available for update as we speak. The main benefit here is that it brings all the different pieces of clone into one console. So all your known preservers, exclusions, scripts, everything is in one place. And the other good thing about it is it walks you through on the clone request page. There are a lot of options under optional settings. And we have received over time a lot of questions on those. So now we have some in-context guidance in the app to explain what those options are, how they affect the data in your clone. One new thing we introduced is an on-demand backup. So if you have any last-minute changes that you applied, as we talked about at the beginning, the data comes from the last backup. What if the backup happened last night and your changes were done just 10 minutes ago? So instead of having to wait a whole nother day, you have now the option to select an on-demand backup, and it will bring in those last minute changes into your clone, and you can move forward faster in some cases. and you won't have to call support for the on-demand backup. So that's right there on the UI. You can select it and you have full control over when it happens. Now that we talked about the clone app and some clone basics, I'd love to talk a bit about clone best practices. There are kind of three main things that we get asked about. One is, how do I reduce my clone time? If you have longer running clones, if you have large instances, then around clone profiles and also around clone chaining, what clone chaining is and how to use it. So I'll walk through each of these. Tips to optimize clone time. One thing to keep in mind is the time it takes to clone is proportional to your data size. So your primary database, if it is the speed that we're working with is around 1 terabyte an hour. So if you have a very large primary, let's say 20 terabytes, it will take around 20 hours. And there are those some additional factors that can reduce or increase this time. The additional factors are the clone settings that you're applying on that clone request page, which now they have also some guidance around which ones increase or decrease your clone time, the exclusions and preservers you apply, and also if you have any custom exclusions and preservers. One optional setting we have on the clone page is the data from specific tables. On the legacy UI, it's called specific tables. On the clone admin console, we are calling out specifically it is the task table and its child table. So task, incident, problem, change. And those are typically very heavy tables. We recommend to keep these as full as opposed to the last 90 days option if you have very large task tables. This can reduce your clone time. So it might be a bit counterintuitive, but in fact, if you have very large tables, then selecting only the last 90 days will be a very time-consuming statement that runs on a very long clone. So we do recommend taking at least a look at this if this is of concern. An alternative to this is to exclude task altogether. And in fact, one trick you can apply is this dot star option, which you can also use it with any other table, but it's essentially a wildcard. If you add dot star to your beginning, for example, task dot star, it'll exclude everything that begins with task. And you'll be able to, instead of having to create lots and lots of exclusions, you can move a bit faster. So just a time saver there for you. One thing to keep in mind, if you exclude a parent table, the child tables are automatically excluded as well. Um, all right. Another thing to keep in mind, preservers. Preservers are the data you want to keep on your target instance. Let's say any demo data that you don't want overwritten. And we'll talk a bit more about in detail how exclusions and preservers interact. One thing to consider is if you have long-running preservers, you can place conditions on these and only select the data to be preserved that you really need. If you select a very large table to be preserved, it'll take potentially a very long time. And clone chaining is something that we'll talk on the next slide to illustrate. So if clone duration is of concern to you, and if also if any data manipulation is of concern to you, you can split your clones into two steps. Particularly interesting if you have a lot of instances. As an example, you can clone from production to a stage environment. On this page, we call it subprod 1. And then subsequently, you can initiate other clones. In fact, you can select up to 5 clones in parallel from subprod 1 to your other subprods that will produce smaller. Typically, subprods are a lot smaller than production instances, so your clones will be leaner and also faster in this secondary phase. So one strategy to consider and to keep in mind. We talked a bit about time-saving tips. I'd also like to point out that clone profiles are a great place to start, especially if you're new to clone. Setting up a profile with exclusions and preservers can be a great start. It'll help you have repeatable, consistent outcomes. You'll know exactly what data will be applied to your clone. As an option, you can also assign a profile to a specific instance if you wish on that profile form. And we have some optional settings, which I'll go through briefly here. So we have the data copied from task. You can select your backup, whether you want the latest backup or if you want a on-demand backup. You can turn off or on your exclude tables. This means that if it's off, you're looking to do a clone without excluding data. Something to keep in mind is there are some mandatory exclusions, for example, security-related tables, licensing-related tables. Those are automatically excluded, even if you are unchecking this box. But your other tables are then copied over. So you can turn off or on your exclusions. Audit and log data can also be excluded. By default, this is off. And one thing to keep in mind is if you disable audit and logs, it will affect your activity stream on your target instance. So the history of records it's composed from the audit and logs tables. So if you don't copy over this data, it might not look right on that target instance, but something to keep in mind. The attachment data you can include or exclude, and the theming that now has also the Polaris or the next experience support. All right, we went through a lot of details here. These are some items, as I mentioned. They also have explanations on the Clone Admin console as well. All right, one of our favorite topics, preservers and exclusions. Um, and yes, and as you have questions about this, please feel free to tap it into the chat and we'll get to them. We get a lot of questions on preservers and exclusions. In fact, and I think as I was looking through this, I found a great article that was looking at how do we make sense of all the different interactions. And I reference this article here because it goes into great detail. It's excellent. But putting it in a 2x2 matrix is a very helpful way to illustrate what happens if you're excluding and preserving, or preserving and not excluding the other combinations that are possible. So let's walk through these one by one and explain how you can achieve your desired outcomes. In this first example here, on the left side, I have the source instance. On the right side, I have the target. On top is the pre-clone target. On the bottom is kind of the result after the clone. If you are both preserving and excluding a table, in effect, you are keeping your target exactly the same. After the clone, it will look exactly the same as before the clone. And as you can see here in this diagram, the SysIDs match, the records are matching, and this is kind of the first scenario that we have. What happens if you're preserving but not excluding the table? If you choose to do this, you are keeping all your records on your target instance, but um, you're also copying over records from your source. And here we have a little detail. What if you have two records where the SysID is matching, but the record does not match? The SysID 111 in this example, right? So in this case, preservers are always taking precedence. And so as you can see in the post-clone target, you will have your 111 SysID from the target instance and the record number 3 that comes over during the clone. And the third scenario is fairly simple. If you're not preserving but excluding, the result will be an empty but usable table. So it'll be just copying over the schema for that table during your clone. And the last example, not preserving and not excluding, you're copying over everything from source. So the source data will replace anything that is on your target instance. I found this to be a really quick and easy way to kind of remember and get an overview of what happens with the different settings. And I hope it also helps when you're thinking about, I have this table on my target instance and I want uh, the data to look a certain way after my clone. This can be a tool to help achieve that. Here I also summarized the kind of the outcomes that we just talked about. Everything from records on the target to remain the same, to keep your records on target, also bring over records from source, to have an empty table on the target, or number 4, to replace everything on the target with records from the source. All right. I saw at the beginning we had almost 80% who are cloning as part of upgrades and development. Um, so this is, and yes, I absolutely encourage you to use this cheat sheet, as Zerlin calls it. I think it's excellent. Um, so to the 80% who are cloning as part of all of these operations, frequent question is, how do I simplify preserving in progress development work? As my development, first of all, I'd like to talk a bit about why is it important to preserve development work? Um, your development project might not end right when the clone is scheduled. So you're likely always to have some update sets which are still in progress, apps that your team is still working on. And if you have a larger team, you might have a lot of them and a lot of different teams with a lot of update sets. So it's important to keep in mind that after the clone, you'll have to bring back these in progress update sets onto your target, and also install any plugins or apps that are not on your source instance. As we've seen with the backup based clone, we're essentially wiping records on the target. So anything that doesn't exist on source will have to be added back. We'll also share on a white paper that we put together around best practices, but I'll share a couple tips here on preserving in-flight update sets. And these were kudos to Andrew Barnes, who has presented this a couple of years ago, actually, and these are some steps you can take here. We'll walk through them. It looks like a lot, but essentially there are three steps. One is on the target instance before your clone, on your source instance, and then after the clone back on your target instance. So one strategy, if you have a lot of teams and a lot of update sets, is to get your list of in-progress update sets, create a brand new update set as a parent, and you can batch your in-progress update sets under that parent. The easiest way to do that on the list view, you can multi-select your records. To do that, you can, I think it's a fairly common shortcut that most folks know, but you can press your shift key and basically drag your mouse down and mass update your entire list. But you can set the parent to all of these in progress update sets to that new update set. And then you have all your in progress update sets batched under that one parent. And now you're only dealing with one, which is a great advantage because you're not having to move multiple around, and you can take that one parent update set it to complete, export it on your source before the clone. Very important, do not commit the update set, but you can retrieve it. You can either wait 24 hours or use the on-demand backup feature that I mentioned. And now because your update set is on your source, it will be part of and it's part of your backup, it'll be part of the clone. So now you can clone regularly from source to target. You'll have that parent update set that contains all your in-flight dev work. After the clone, on the target instance, you can set the parent back to in progress and unparent the update sets that you wish to keep working on. And this is a method that you can use at scale as well, and it'll save you a lot of time as opposed to going through each individual update set that is out there. So hopefully it saves some time for folks on the call who are dealing with lots of update sets. All right. I see some folks posted some questions in the channel here.
Yeah, we have some questions in our Q&A. We can start with the first one. Does the clone admin console show you the last full backup completed on date?
Whether the clone admin console shows the backup. I don't believe that is in the, so you can see that information as part of the logs, and the logs are accessible on the clone admin console. So you can go to the clone status page, and if you scroll down the page, there is a link that shows show logs. And if you go to that, it should list from the beginning of the clone to the completion the different logging events. One of them is the backup that was applied, and it should contain the timestamp that it has as well. And yes, I see that the link that I shared there, I'm not able to remove the hyperlink, but you definitely have to replace instance name with your instance name there if you want to get the latest version of the clone admin console there.
The next question, for accessibility, is that on the roadmap in terms of like making it user-friendly for the dark mode?
For the dark mode, we do have that as part of our roadmap. Yes. I don't have a committed timeline to that, but yes, it's certainly on our list. And thank you for that question.
We also have two folks on, before I get to the rest of the ones on the chat, on our Q&A section. We have two folks who raised their hands, so we're going to allow them to. We have Kieran. Feel free to. You're currently allowed to ask the question. If you
Oh
just
yeah.
unmute yourself, you can ask your question live. Kieran. Okay. The
Yeah.
other person who uh does
Yeah, feel free to unmute or
Dustin.
type it in the chat, whichever works better. I think
Quick,
Kiran still has.
quick couple of questions I put on the quick Q&A too. The first was just, is there a way to, especially on the preservers, is there a way to get the related tables also? For example, I want to preserve all the dev test groups or QA test groups and their members and their information, right? So instead of preserving the whole related tables, is there a simpler way that we can do that through the tool? That was the first question. Second question was an example that you showed where you are putting the parent update set and you're putting all the child update set in the from the VIP into that, and then when you close the complete, doesn't it close the child also? So you're bringing them back again from the complete set, and then you're putting it into VIP. Is that best practice? Like, are we allowed to do that? Or I try not to do that because of how the updates are changing from complete to VIP work sometimes.
You can do that, and it can even be automated if you want. So I think with Yokohama we have an API the that supports retrieving and applying update sets out of the box, which could be used to even reduce this manual work.
Hmm. So you
But
can do a pre-clone activity script to kind of do that.
yes, it's possible. But to answer, yeah, I mean, as long as you don't commit it to the source, you're just retrieving it. It will be part of that backup, and you'll be fine. Back on the target, you'll have to set it back to in progress, and you can remove the parent. It'll be basically same as before. We're also exploring on our end ways to automate this. This is kind of the method that currently will save you some time if you're struggling, or if you're, if this is one thing that you're wishing to simplify. Um, but yeah, we're looking at other options as well. To your first question around preserving related tables, yes. So today I mentioned exclusions are cascading down, right? You're preserving you're excluding the parent, it'll automatically exclude the children. Preservers work the opposite in a way. If you're preserving the child, it will preserve up the hierarchy. So it'll preserve the parents. And consequently, if you're preserving the parent, it will not automatically preserve the child tables um, today. That's how it works. Um,
About related tables, those tables are not child and parent. So the tables that are listed there, they're not that. These just related tables. How will that be on the? How will that be? We have to go and find it, right? I'm just saying, is there an easier way to do that through the schema mapping and
yes,
automatically doing that, as opposed to us going and figuring that out? Just looking for a lazy way to do it. That's
yeah. There isn't a automated way today to do it. Um, but to answer, yes, it would have to be preserved individually if you want to preserve the different relationships and the different related tables. And the schema map you mentioned should point out the different relationships and tables that are in question. Yeah, but thanks for the feedback and the question. Appreciate it.
Okay, going back to the questions that we have, in the Q&A. Um, are you aware of a known issue regarding cleanup scripts? Since several months, they're not executed after the clone.
I'm not aware of an issue, but yeah, if that's, I would, yeah, I would reach out to us with your kind of steps to reproduce, and yeah, we definitely would like to take a look at that, what exactly is happening. It
Yes,
should,
feel free to submit a case through our now support, and that will help us try to reproduce that. Next question. I think you might have answered this one already, but do we use exclusions to avoid cloning mid-server data from prod to non-prod instances?
exclusions to clone which data? Sorry, I didn't.
Do we use exclusions to avoid cloning mid-server data from prod to non-prod?
Know whether it works or whether it's possible.
Yeah, whether it's possible, like if the exclusions will work to avoid the cloning, I guess, of the mid-server data from production to non-prod instances. It seems that it always causes the mid-servers on non-prod instances to disconnect after every clone, and there's issues with user accounts that are running the mid-servers.
Yeah. Um, there should be a way to preserve and exclude that data. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a matter of setting them up. Um, I'd have to look at the specific case to look into it. But yeah,
Okay.
if you're excluding the records and then preserving that specific one, it should be taking precedence over the exclusions. Another thing with permissions and roles that I've seen work well is that um, there are certain groups created on production which are inactive, and post clone a script to flip them to active um, and update the groups for certain accounts. That can help kind of automate and simplify the permissions you want to apply after a clone, if that helps.
Yep. Okay, another next question. If I kick off a clone to dev and choose on-demand backup and schedule a clone of a test to start a few hours later than that, will it use the on-demand backup from dev, or do I need to choose on-demand backup for test as well?
Is the question?
If you click on the Q&A on the bottom on the ribbon of the Zoom, you can see it. It's from Jeremy Golden
Oh, okay.
at the very top.
Yes, yes. Oh, perfect. Cool. There it is. Okay. Kick off a clone. Choose on-demand backup. Schedule a clone of test to start a few hours later. So you're cloning from prod to dev and then prod to test, or prod to dev and then dev to test. Test as well. I would choose on demand for both in this case. Um, yep, that's what I would recommend. That way we're sure that, I mean, you'll get the timestamp of the backup and you can look. It should always use the latest differential, but to be absolutely sure, I would choose the on-demand backup because all it is it's a differential backup. It's not going to take a full backup. One thing to keep in mind, the backup starts at your clone start time. So it might add to your clone duration because in addition to your clone operation, then at the beginning, it'll also take a backup, which will push back the time when the clone could start. Um, Mostly for large instances, more of a concern, but yeah, it should be. Preserving during clone, taking care of the help of certain field settings or user keys. Um, it, I'm not sure what uh, I'm not sure what cos is, but we have out of the box preservers for keys for security settings. Those should be covered if that is the question.
Okay. Um, why export the parent update set if it will be retrieved by the source instance?
I see. So the parent update set is on the target instance, right? So on the target instance, let's say you have 100 update sets and they're all in progress. You're not ready to promote them yet. The project is still ongoing. So the parent update set comes into play if you want, instead of dealing with 100 update sets on your non-prod, export each individually, apply them, you can batch them into one parent, then and then bring them to your source instance so that it'll be part of your clone. It'll reduce the amount of back and forth, so um, you won't have to import it manually into your target after the clone. If you retrieve it to prod, then clone, your target will automatically have that parent update set, and it'll be um, part of your instance already. Why wait 24 hours? If you wait 24 hours, you allow time for the backup to happen because clone takes its data from the last backup. So you can either wait 24 hours and initiate the clone, or you can select on-demand backup and it will take that update set in. How can I get rid of old records from the My Clones form, canceled ones? Yeah, that's something that we're working on. On the homepage there, you have the ability to filter the records. And if you save your filters, it should save your preferences. It's saved in the sys user preference table. Um, so if you set up your personal view and you exclude canceled ones from the homepage of the clone app, it should not show anymore. Let us know if you have any trouble with that, Herbert. And feel free to open a case or inquire if that doesn't work, but should work with the filter for now. Choosing the option to preserve in progress update sets. Yes, that's a great question. This one, currently, the preserve update set only takes care of the global scope update sets that are in the last 90 days. And typically, we've seen projects sometimes go over 90 days. And a lot of people are developing in scoped apps. So, in short, to put it more shortly, it doesn't cover all the update sets, and that's why the method I shared is kind of a way to make sure that you have everything you need in that one parent, because that feature only covers very limited subset today of global last 90 days update sets. Retrieved update sets on your target. How do you set the work in progress? You should be able, back on a list view, you should be able to set it back into in progress on that, Tobias. But yeah, you shouldn't have to commit them. Should be able to do that. We'll also um, we'll post a KB article on this method in the maybe in the comment section, Patty. I think we'll publish this,
Yeah,
right?
we'll publish this in our blog of this session, and we'll put all the relevant links, including the PowerPoint deck and the recording. So you'll be able to
Yeah.
reference that
Yes.
afterwards.
Yes. We'll add the kind of the how-to KB there, and if there's any questions on that, it'll be open to comments, and we can dive into resolving those. But thank you all for the questions. And Nikesh, I see here on the source for the clone, do we need to delete update sets that have been imported as a batch? After the operation is complete, you can certainly delete them. I will double check on that and add it to the KB article there. Great question. Thanks for the question. Performance wise. Right, and I see lots of more questions coming. RaptorDB clones. So RaptorDB is faster for queries and for certain use cases. It doesn't necessarily translate into faster clones. I wouldn't assume that, but we're always looking, at least on our team, to improve the clone time and the performance. So it's certainly our focus area. Clone dashboard is empty. Yes, we rely on a new clone request table for the clone admin console. So your um, clone history from legacy will not show on the clone app. It'll only include clones that are submitted from the clone admin console. Pre-clone API batch completed. Yes, there is a API with Yokohama that is available. I think CICD. I could find the link, but it essentially has capability to automate, to retrieve, and to bring those back as part of this operation, Dunstan. So that comes out of the box in Yokohama. It's not part of the clone admin console, but it's available as part of a platform feature. All right, I think this is the first time we actually got through all the questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for posting your questions, and thank you, Adrian, for presenting. We do have some upcoming academies, so please stay tuned. Next month, we have two academies. On March 20th, we'll have it on the topic of disk utilization and table cleaner. And then on March 27th, we'll have an introduction to ServiceNow multi-factor authentication. On April 10th, we'll kickstart your journey with impact accelerators for platform foundations. And then April 20th, we will be presenting on how to prepare for Knowledge 25. If you haven't registered, please make sure to register. We don't want to miss you. We want to see you at K25 this year. And then in May, we will be skipping our academy because we hope to see you live in our workshops at the K25 Knowledge in Vegas. We also if you haven't signed up, we have our own platform owner admin feedback sessions. And these sessions is something that we started in Q4 of last year, but If you're interested, the purpose of these is that we're seeking valuable feedback from our platform owners and admins on how you use the ServiceNow platform and its applications. By completing this form, you or your team members are invited to participate in a one-on-one customer feedback session. The sessions are designed to gather insights that will help us enhance the platform to better meet your needs. Your insights are crucial to helping our outbound platform team improve our service now and strengthen our platform fundamentals, foundations, enablement. So we really appreciate your time and contribution, and we'll be scheduling those soon. Thank you all for joining, and hope to see you in the next Academy.
Thank you very much. And I see we have had a request to share the white paper. I'm trying to rise to add the link. It's a Now Learning, cloning. I think if you search for cloning and Now Learning, you'll find it, and we'll also add it to the comments of the recording. Right. Well, thank you, Patty, for
Thank
hosting.
you.
Have a great day, everyone.